Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, September the 18th, 2020. It is currently 9:09 a.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church, located here in Ovalo, Texas. Now, if you've never listened to the Non-Catholic Catholic podcast, let me remind you that I am the non-Catholic, who is sometimes referred to as a Catholic because of my interest and study of Catholic theology, Catholic history, and I decided to learn as much as I can about Catholic theology and Catholic history so that when I speak about the subject, I can do so from a position of knowledge, not a position of ignorance. And one of the things that motivated me to do this was because I got so very tired of listening to sometimes Protestant pastors speak about Catholicism and demonstrate that they didn't actually understand it, and they haven't really bothered to actually study it or to even do their best to fairly represent it. I think you can disagree with it, but even when you disagree with a theological position, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if I'm speaking of Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, it doesn't matter, Islam, anyone who speaks about anything, the Christian perspective should be speak the truth. Fairly represent it. You can disagree with it. You may condemn it on biblical grounds, saying that it doesn't measure up to a biblical perspective on this subject or this theological system is against the scriptures. That's one thing, but fairly represent it. So that's what I've always set out to do, and I decided to create a podcast where me, the non-Catholic Catholic, speaks about things related to Catholicism, but I do so obviously not from a Catholic perspective, but from a non-Catholic perspective. But from a non-Catholic perspective that's trying to be fair, right? That's trying to fairly represent it. That's trying to do so with, hopefully a little bit of knowledge and not a lot of ignorance. That's the goal. So I don't know how many times I need to explain what the Non-Catholic Catholic podcast is about. I'm still trying to figure that out. Like, do I need to explain it every time? I know the one time I don't explain it, then I'm going to get an email going, wait a minute, what's going on? And I'm going to have to explain it. So I'll have to determine that. But we're not here to talk about why this podcast exists. We're not here to talk about the perspective this podcast is trying to offer up. We are here today to talk about, some news, some Catholic news related to Pope Francis. And, are you ready for it? A new encyclical. Pope Francis will be releasing a new encyclical, and when it is released, then obviously I will read it, and obviously I will offer my thoughts from, again, a non-Catholic perspective. So let's get to the news. Let's listen. I've got a report here about it. We're going to get the date. We're going to get a little information about what an encyclical is, in case you don't know, and we'll get a little. There's some. It seems a little. I won't say controversy, maybe. No, I don't know if it's reached it's not a major controversy. Maybe there's been a minor controversy about the title of the new encyclical and exactly, how we should what's the title saying. So let's listen, and I'll just jump in as we analyze this report, and I'll offer some of my thoughts. Here we go.
Welcome back. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, our first story this week involves a papal encyclical. Now that is a term in Latin. It refers to a kind of circular letter. It refers to a time when really the only way for the Pope to get his thinking about something out was to send guys out on horseback to carry these letters around to the bishops of the Catholic world. Over time, it has come to be seen, an encyclical has come to be seen as sort of the most important, most significant form of papal teaching, and therefore fairly high up the food chain in terms of the Pope's magisterial authority, that is, his teaching authority. Pope Francis has been in office 8 years, and this will only be his third. The first came in 2013 when he issued a document called Lumen Fidei, the Light of Faith, which was sort of about reason and faith. It was the key theme of the papacy of his predecessor, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. And most of that text, by Pope Francis's own free admission, was prepared by Benedict. So this was Francis, in effect, lending his own authority and putting his own stamp of approval on Benedict's thought. The first truly distinctive and original encyclical letter by Pope Francis came in 2016 with the Laudato Si on care for our common home, the care for creation. It was sort of Pope Francis's green manifesto. And as we all know, that encyclical was part of a trajectory in which Pope Francis has become, in effect, the chaplain, if you like, of the movement, the contemporary movement against climate change, against global warming, in favor of dramatic action to protect the environment. And in many ways, that document was a charter for the broader social agenda of his papacy. Now, that brings us to October 2020, when Pope Francis is set to issue the third such encyclical letter of his pontificate. The document is to be called Tutti Fratelli, and it is on human fraternity and solidarity. Now, we'll talk about the likely content of this document in a moment, but let's pause for a moment to talk about what it's called. Now, this title, Tutti Fratelli, is a quotation from St. Francis in his admonitions to members of his new community, what would become the Franciscan order. And there is a line in which Francis describes how in the Franciscan order, the ethos is to be that we are all tutti fratelli, all brothers. Now, he was referring, of course, in that historic moment, in that context, to men, and therefore one can make the argument that Tutti Fratelli is the appropriate translation of that reference. On the other hand, there are many who believe that Pope Francis obviously does not intend to address this encyclical only to men. Therefore, it would be better to use more inclusive terminology, and the most frequent candidate is calling it all brothers and sisters. To date, the Vatican has not yet said officially what the English translation is going to be. It is interesting to note that official Vatican news agencies themselves have translated it differently. Some have been saying brothers, some have been saying sisters. As a footnote, I would also note that the national anthem of Italy, where this conversation is now occurring, is actually Fratelli d'Italia, Brothers of Italy, but it's widely understood here to mean everybody, men and women. So not sure how that is going to sort itself out, but the basic point to take away from all of this is that when Pope Francis himself made the decision to call this document Tutti Fratelli, he wasn't trying to exclude anybody. He was trying to quote his namesake, St. Francis. And the fact that he's going to Assisi on the vigil of the Feast of St. Francis is confirmation of the point. All right, in terms of the likely content, let us remember that a year and a half ago, in February 2019, Pope Francis traveled to Abu Dhabi in a trip that was extraordinarily important for his outreach to the Islamic world, really to everyone beyond the borders of the Catholic Church. And while there, he signed what is now known as a document on human fraternity with the Grand Imam of the Al-Azhar Mosque and University in Cairo, which is widely known as sort of the Vatican of the Sunni Muslim world. That is the most authoritative institution within the branch of Islam that represents almost 80% of the world's 1.3 billion Muslims. And that document was about the quest for fraternity and for solidarity across the traditional dividing lines. Now, it was criticized at the time by some inside the church who said, well, but there's really nothing particularly Christian about this document, which, of course, was understandable when you're signing a document with an imam. This can't be a tract from...
Now, let's stop right there. I've talked about that. I think I've done in an episode. I think I've done at least one episode about that document, maybe more, where, there was some criticism because it's almost as if Pope Francis was acting like Muslims were fellow believers, that somehow we believe in the same God. Like there was some major issues there. And now I don't have that document open in front of me to be able to pull out lines and be able to just offer criticism of it again. But I think this is very important. Because Pope Francis is only the third encyclical, and the first one, encyclical, okay, my Texas accent may be coming through there. The first encyclical released was really the encyclical of Pope Benedict, who is, I would say Pope Benedict was far more theological, far more biblical, far more biblically minded, far more theological than Pope Francis. Pope Francis is very much more in line with social issues, social concerns, and that's why his first real encyclical dealt with, well, climate change and the environment and a Christian responsibility. He may have tried to approach it somewhat from a theological, he tried to offer obviously some biblical and theological reasons for that way of thinking, but it was much more socially conscious than I would say theologically conscious. And I think that's fair. I don't think I'm being unfair there. I think if you go read, I've read most of the books from Pope Benedict, and very theological. I think there's something there, and when he deals with theological issues, Pope Benedict, go before he became Pope, Cardinal Ratzinger, there's a lot there from someone who has studied theology, have degrees in theology. His books, I felt, offered me plenty to think about. Not saying I always agreed with his theological perspective, but there was something really to grab onto. Pope Francis obviously hasn't released any encyclical that's that way, and I don't believe this one will be very theological. What my concern is, if he's going to go in this direction and talk about some, unity and fraternity, and he's going to connect this towards Islam and try to somehow say we're all one and just kind of almost throw out theological distinctions, throw out, that salvation is in Christ and in Christ and him crucified and apart from Christ, is there salvation? If he's going to, is this going to be a major turning point where I'm going to say this, where Pope Francis, in my opinion, even turns further away, even from traditional Catholic teaching? Is he going to move even further away? Many refer to Pope Francis as being a very liberal, as more of his liberal perspective, liberal theological tendency, liberal theological bent. Is it going to become even more evident in this new encyclical letter? That's what I'm going to be looking for. That's what I'm going to be reading. Now, I don't know what the content is, but where this report's going, it seems to be saying it could possibly go in that direction. Is this going to be like, hey, we're all one, we're all together, and there is no distinction, based off, your belief in the true God versus no belief in the true God. Like, exactly where is he going to go here? I don't know. We'll let this report finish, but yes, we talked. I'm almost positive. In fact, let me look here. I'm going to pull up the Non-Catholic Catholic podcast. I'm going to pull it up and look. I do too many podcasts, so I can't always remember everything that I have covered. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to pull this up. The Non-Catholic Catholic. Pope Francis Prayer and Human Fraternity. May the 3rd, 2020. In fact, I did 2 reports. Pope Francis Prayer and Human Fraternity on May the 3rd. 59 minutes was that report. I think if you even go further back, okay, if you go back to, May the 3rd, I did 2. I did a 33-minute one called Pope Francis, an Apocalyptic Prayer, an Apocalyptic Player, Pope Francis. That was May the 3rd, 2020. That was 33 minutes long. Then later that day, I did Pope Francis Prayer and Human Fraternity, 59 minutes, May the 3rd, 2020. Then on May the 13th, I did a 16-minute report called Pope Francis and the Day of Interfaith Prayer. So in May, I was obviously talking a lot about Pope Francis and this kind of way of thinking. So now are we going to see kind of the culmination of some of those previous concerns showing up in an encyclical letter, which is, one of the, it demonstrates magisterial authority. This would be magisterial authority. This would be something that would hold some authority within Catholicism. It wouldn't just be an off-the-cuff remark. It just wouldn't be something he said in an interview. This would be an encyclical letter of a sitting pope. That, I think, if he goes that direction, I think it could be theologically significant. I think it could be, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's see what they go on to say in this report.
The Catechism of the Catholic Church, this encyclical probably will provide Pope Francis an opportunity to provide a kind of Christian infrastructure for many of the conclusions already rolled out in that document. We will keep our eyes on it. All right, so the second story we mentioned at the time.
Okay, so they didn't really go into, I thought they were going to possibly offer more detail. They kind of just stopped right there. I was hoping. I came across that report just a little while ago, and so I just wanted to play it live for both of us. So that's why I'm responding to it in real time. I do that all the time. So that's where it's not all rehearsed and planned. So it's like, hey, I found this. Let's listen to it together. So if you listen to all of it, sometimes I don't explain the way I do things for every podcast. But if you listen to me enough, you know that's what I do. So what can we take from this? I think I've already offered where I believe this could possibly go. This idea of human fraternity. Pope Francis really likes this idea that, hey, we're all unified, we're all one. And yes, we're all human beings. We all created in the image of God, so there is some unity there. But at the same time, the Bible clearly divides us. Like, you are either saved or you are not saved, right? There is a separation there, even within Catholic theology. I mean, you either have become converted, right? You've converted. You're a follower of Christ. You have become, committed to the Catholic Church. You've entered into the Catholic Church, baptism, confirmation, and though there are those who have not. Now, are you going to say those who have not, who living in mortal sin, reject the Catholic Church, reject the authority of the Pope, reject Christ, reject his sacrificial death? There's got to be a division there, right? People who worship a completely different God and a completely different religion with a completely different authoritative religious text. Are you going to try to bring unity at the expense of truth, of the Bible, of doctrine, of the history, even, again, looking at from a Catholic perspective, the history of Catholicism, the Catechism, all of the documents within the Catholic Church, the creeds? Like, you're going to just throw all of that out and say, and look at for some kind of fraternity and unity and coming together? I don't know exactly where it's going to go. He may look at a lot of issues. Look, I think we can say this. We live in a time of great division, right? There's we're politically divided, racially divided. There's lots of division. And is Pope Francis going to try to speak to all of the divisions currently happening in our world? And is he going to offer a truly biblical and theological solution? Or is this going to be a situation where he steps out and really deviates from a truly historically Catholic perspective and definitely from a biblical perspective? We'll have to wait. I think it's October the 3rd is when he will sign this, and I am assuming it will then be immediately released, probably in a digital. I'm assuming in a digital way, on from the Vatican website, and other websites will make a digital copy available. Hopefully on October the 3rd. Maybe it will show up October the 4th. I'm assuming on October the 3rd. And I believe it is October the 3rd. So we will be, we got a little ways to wait. Is it going to be controversial? I don't know. I'm by no means an expert in how Catholics respond to encyclicals released by a pope. I read the encyclicals, but my perspective obviously is not necessarily the same that's happening in the average Catholic parish. Does the average Catholic even care that an encyclical is released? Do they even read it? Or, I'm assuming, now I know I've listened to enough homilies, that typically then the priest during homilies will make a reference to the encyclical, tell everyone about it, make a reference, read something from it. It will show up in the preaching and may guide the preaching in the homilies of many Catholic priests for a week, maybe a month after the release of the encyclical letter. I don't know if individual parishes, if they get together and do a reading of the encyclical and discuss it and have study groups about it. I don't know. But I know I'm going to be looking at it, and I'm just curious to see. I think Pope Francis. I mean, there's been plenty of concern within Catholicism about things that Pope Francis says, some of the things he does, and it's like, where is he going? And it's like, from a non-Catholic perspective, it would be very interesting for me if Pope Francis just basically came out. And again, this is pure speculation. This is not even really speculation. It would be fascinating for me as a non-Catholic if I was sitting back watching all of this take place. Pope Francis releases a document that basically says, "Hey, Islam is true, Christianity is true." I mean, go that far. And just to see how does Catholics respond to that? How would that? What I mean, it's an encyclical letter. It has magisterial authority. So what happens? If he says, "Hey, Islam is true, Christianity is true," which would be just absolutely no way to reconcile that. That doesn't even make sense logically. You got completely competing religions with completely competing, religious claims. I mean, Islam rejects the doctrine of the Trinity. They would reject the deity of Christ. I mean, we go on and on and on. The different things that Islam completely rejects that Christianity teaches, and there's things that Islam teaches that Christianity completely rejects. So how could they both be true? If he was to come out and try to somehow make that argument, it would be interesting from a non-Catholic perspective to go, okay, what do Catholics do? How do they handle that? To watch that play out in modern times. I'm not saying he will go that far. I'm saying it would be very interesting to watch it happen. Now, who knows? He may release the document that has nothing to do with Islam, doesn't even mention Islam. Islam's not even brought up. It's just they kind of mentioned it there, which reminded me of his discussion with, signing that document, with an Islamic leader, having kind of already moving in that direction. It would be very interesting to see if he does so in an encyclical letter. And if he does, what will that mean? Now, I could be completely wrong. I'm throwing out lots of speculation here, but it will be very interesting to see. We will have to wait. And when it is released, I will obviously find a copy, and I'll obviously read it and bring you my thoughts. You can give me your predictions. You can give me your wild speculations. You can throw out your thoughts. Where do you think Pope Francis is going in his next encyclical letter? Where do you think he's going? What do you think he's going to say? What is your prediction? Just, and again, speculation. I'm not making any prediction. I'm not trying to, act like that I have some inside scoop, because clearly I do not. I mean, I'm sitting here in a Baptist church in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Clearly, I have no connections to the Vatican or anyone in Rome, okay? But it is interesting just to listen. And the reason I played that report is that comes from a Catholic source. So I wanted to play a Catholic source reporting on it and see what they're going. So I just thought it was interesting. They brought up some of those things. I perceive that some of those things that are to be a concern. We'll see where it all goes. So newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. Please send me your thoughts, your feedback, and we will see where it goes. newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. All right, thanks for listening. This special kind of impromptu look at some breaking news about Pope Francis and an upcoming encyclical, I'll say it correctly, encyclical letter that will be released, I believe, on October the 3rd. All right, thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day. God bless.